It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story: the children who film attacks on other children for likes and notoriety. Sky News investigates the disturbing trend to gain attention on social media.
I don't really like walking around now where I know people from my school are going to be, because pretty much everyone in my school knows about it.
Iran's army agrees to extend the ceasefire as thousands scramble to flee the fighting. Those who've already escaped tell us about their ordeal.
That's my uncle. That's my uncle.
The moment our correspondent came across one of her family reaching safety. Also this evening, police find a body in a reservoir as they search for the fiancé of a pregnant teacher found dead in Glasgow. The latest nurses' strikes are curtailed by a court as a judge rules next week's walkout is unlawful.
This is the darkest day in this dispute so far.
Documents released by Prince Harry between the palace and News Group newspapers appear to show Queen Elizabeth was fully aware of phone hacking and surveillance on the royal family. Plus, tributes after the death of Jerry Springer, the controversial American talk show host whose show transformed daytime TV. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview. That is coming up from 10:30 tonight. Hello there, very good evening to you. Sky News has discovered growing evidence of bullies setting up violent attacks on fellow pupils and videoing them so they can be posted in private chat groups. The National Bullying Helpline says it's a sickening and escalating problem where a child is humiliated for online entertainment. But it warns schools and the police are often too slow to realise it's happening and not robust enough when they do find evidence of it. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, has this special report and a warning that some viewers may find some of the images distressing.
A schoolgirl dragged down by her hair and punched on the ground. We've protected identities, but another girl, while filming, gets involved, kicking her in the face. Dozens are watching and videoing an ambush that everyone seemed to know was about to happen, just outside a school in Rochdale. And the motive? Quite possibly the videos themselves. A moment of notoriety on social media, creating content to be shared and laughed about in private groups on Snapchat.
Just nearly fell up the stairs.
Courageously, the 13-year-old girl who was attacked just before the Easter holidays wants to speak about it. She's asked not to show her face.
And how badly did they hurt you?
I had a black eye. My head, every time I spoke, hurt. I couldn't laugh because my head hurt. I couldn't move my neck. My back was sore. I have a scar on my knee that they cut open. I don't really like walking around now where I know people from my school are going to be, because pretty much everyone in my school knows about it.
Yeah. So you think it's just random? They just pick a target?
Yeah, easy target, someone who's normally quiet, somebody who doesn't bother anybody. They'll then use that person as a target to create this online content.
Yeah.
Billy, the half-brother and legal guardian of the girl who was attacked, says this is becoming a dangerous craze.
I don't believe my sister has any long-running rivalries within the school. I believe this was created solely for the content of the internet.
So it was just a random attack so that people could post it online and show off. And you think it is a craze?
It is a craze, yeah. It's happening all over the country now.
The National Bullying Helpline told Sky News this is indeed an escalating and deeply troubling national trend.
Do the children realise that this is a criminal offence, beating somebody up? The police and the schools have got to take more action.
For safeguarding reasons, we've decided not to name the school in Rochdale near where the attack happened. But parents tell us there have been several similar attacks just at this one school. Here, inside the premises, a girl secretly starts recording. We've reduced the audio to protect identities, but a verbal assault leads up to a physical one. The school we're not naming told us it takes its duty of care extremely seriously and they respond robustly to disclosures on student safety. The incidents we've highlighted are subject to ongoing inquiries. Sky News understands the attack on this 13-year-old is now being investigated by the police. But the National Bullying Helpline says schools and authorities are failing to keep pace with this growing UK-wide problem. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Sudan's army has agreed to extend the fragile ceasefire in the country as the scramble for people fleeing the fighting to escape continues. British nationals still stuck in Sudan have been told to move now if they want to leave. So far, nearly 900 have been flown to safety. Tens of thousands of people have already left the country in the past few days, with 16,000 alone crossing the border into Egypt. One of the routes out of Sudan is by boat to the Jeddah Islamic port in Saudi Arabia. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bagir was there when one boat reached safety. And unknown to her, one of her relatives was on board.
HMS Taif comes into vision. Taif means protected, encircled, just like those on board.
It's just unbelievable. The ship slowly pulling in. You start to see people's features, you see the eagerness on their faces to get to safety after 10 hours at sea. Finally, just some solace from what has been the most horrifying time.
Saudi Arabia has evacuated more people from the violent chaos of Sudan than any other country in the world. And as they approach Jeddah's shores, gratitude overflows.
How are you feeling?
I'm glad for good friends in Saudi Arabia today.
Yeah. You're American.
I am an American, yeah.
And what was it like for you getting out?
It was a long journey out of Khartoum. Lots of craziness happening, but you know what? The Sudanese people themselves were beautiful people. If it hadn't been for the Sudanese people helping us at each journey, each step of the way, it was absolutely beautiful. And then to see our friends and brothers in Saudi Arabia get us here, I'm truly grateful.
في السودان عندك أهل لسه هناك؟
عندي أخواني هناك، أخواتي هناك.
قلقان عليهم؟
شديد طبعا.
هتطلعهم كيف؟
إن شاء الله ربنا يصلح الحال.
إن شاء الله يا رب.
ربنا يصلح الحال والحرب تجيب. إن شاء الله.
آمين.
Hundreds and hundreds of people in Port Sudan waiting.
Still waiting.
And in Khartoum? Trapped in Khartoum.
Trapped in Khartoum at Nin. They have been trapped in Khartoum and this still group of people trapped there. Can you believe this one? Running out of water, children inside. So, but then we got the chance to be here. It's a heaven.
Final moments of disarray before their feet hit steady ground. And as the crowd parts...
But that's my uncle. That's my uncle. خالو محسن.
كيف حالك؟
الحمد لله على السلامة. ما عارفاك انت جيت.
تحركنا امبارح والله. الحمد لله.
احساسك شنو؟
لا الحمد لله بس مراغين لك الحمد لله.
Saudi Arabia's navy has been commended for its rescue efforts.
How much resources have you thrown behind these evacuation missions?
We used all of our resources and we feel happy about this. We didn't feel sorry, we feel happy and we are ready to provide whatever we can to complete this operations.
Do you see more evacuation missions in the future to help Sudanese people who are stranded?
As a number, I really wouldn't have exact figures, but we are ready to provide the comfort.
Around 2,500 people from 67 countries have made it to safety here. Men and women, old and young. Out of the devastation, but many still far from home. Yusra El-Bagir, Sky News, Jeddah.
Scottish police have found a body in the search for the fiancé of a pregnant primary school teacher who was found dead in Glasgow. 35-year-old Morel Starrock was discovered in the early hours of Tuesday morning. She was 29 weeks pregnant. Detectives launched a murder investigation and a search for David Yates, whose car was spotted at Mugdock Country Park. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillies reports. And there is some flash photography, a warning for you.
She was the much-loved primary school teacher who devoted her life to children. The mum-to-be murdered, 29 weeks pregnant. Morel Sturrock and her fiancé David Yates were music fans. She was killed and there was a manhunt to find him.
I can confirm that sadly her unborn baby did not survive. Our thoughts are with Morel's family and friends and along with everyone affected by this tragedy.
Morel's remains were found here at their family home in Glasgow on Tuesday.
Yeah, we're just going to put a cordon on up here if that's okay.
But this investigation took detectives to woodlands 10 miles away. This vast area, the place where a car belonging to Yates was discovered. This is an investigation involving specialist officers, these divers entering the nearby reservoir. Teams trained to use this equipment for complex inquiries. After what was time scouring for clues came the discovery of a man's body in these waters. Remains thought to be David Yates. At the school where Morel worked, a sense of loss.
Did she teach your kids?
Yeah.
And what was she like as a
lovely.
teacher?
So lovely, so very lovable and friendly. She always helped her children if they fell, if they were like upset, emotional, she'd be looking after them.
She treated the kids like her own. She picked them up. She had made them have confidence within themselves.
The school's head teacher described Morel as kind, diligent, talented and considerate. Someone who made time for everyone. A fitting tribute as murder detectives attempt to discover why her life was cut so cruelly short. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Glasgow.
A 48-hour strike planned by nurses in England next Tuesday has been cut short after a judge ruled that it was unlawful. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, had made the argument that a 6-month mandate for action would expire. The Royal College of Nursing didn't contest the case, but the union's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, insisted the nurses remain resolute despite the ruling. Sky's health correspondent Ashish Joshi has this report.
Pat Cullen looked defiant and confident. But while there was a strong union presence outside the High Court, inside there was nobody to argue the nurses' case. The High Court ruled the planned 48-hour strike, which starts on Sunday evening, could not extend into next Tuesday because the RCN mandate will have expired. The judge, Mr. Justice Linden, said the union had shown a high degree of unreasonableness, that the outcome was inevitable, and instead of grasping the nettle and conceding, it had forced the case to court. The strike was called after nurses rejected the government's pay offer earlier this month.
This is the darkest day in this dispute so far. Any government that would drag their nursing staff through the courts, they've won their legal battle today, but what this has led to is they've lost nursing and they've lost the public.
The walkout will be the first to include emergency departments, cancer wards and intensive care staff, like Bert.
It has made me more determined. I think a government that rather goes to court for the nurses instead of sitting in a negotiation room called me out, and this is serious. This is just a group of people that doesn't know how to respectfully sit together and search for a solution.
But Bert and his colleagues could still have the government's offer imposed on them as other unions continue to ballot members ahead of talks next week. The government said it regretted taking this court action but felt it was necessary to protect patients. The NHS estimates nearly 500,000 appointments have been delayed over the past 5 months of industrial action by health workers.
Every day of strike has an impact on patients. It's outpatients appointments cancelled, tests cancelled, operations cancelled, and absolutely, we don't want to stop the right to strike, but it has to be done in a legal way.
The RCN says it will re-ballot members over future strike action. If further dates are announced, the union now knows to make sure they're not breaking the law. Ashish Joshi, Sky News, at London's High Court.
Gambling firms will be forced to introduce more safeguards to help prevent people getting addicted as part of the biggest reform in regulation of the industry for 2 decades. Affordability checks will be brought in, and there's also to be a stake limit for online slot betting with greater protection for people aged between 18 and 24 who are considered more vulnerable. But there's no change to the rules over advertising and sport, which has disappointed campaigners. Our business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
The odd bet here and there, but for some, the consequences are grave.
It was the huge win I had when I was 29, life-changing money, and unfortunately it led me into the deep, dark despair of a gambling addiction. I just don't understand in 2023 how this is still being allowed to continue. It's a bit like smoking 40, 50 years ago.
Policymakers have finally taken action, publishing a long-awaited white paper that will crack down on a thriving industry.
We need a new approach that recognises a flutter is one thing, unchecked addiction is another.
Among the policies outlined are a statutory levy that will force gambling companies to fund treatment of addicts by the NHS, new financial checks for gamblers who lose £125 or more in a month, and even more rigorous checks for those who lose £1,000 a day. And maximum stakes for online slot machines of £2 for anyone aged under 25 and £15 for everyone else. For some, it hasn't gone far enough, with tougher rules on advertising noticeably absent. But the industry said it was important for the right balance to be struck.
We pay 4.2 billion in tax, and we have 22.5 million customers who take part in betting and gaming activities regularly and on a monthly basis. What's important about this white paper is that it's proportionate, that it's evidence-based, and that it's balanced. But we will be working with government to implement the changes that they have put forward.
This is the biggest overhaul of gambling rules in over a decade. And while the measures have been broadly welcomed, the wait isn't over just yet. Many of these policies will go out for further consultation. And with the current backlog of legislative business in Westminster, that could mean further delays.
It's very simple. Take a pencil, preferably a red one, and go consultation, no, consultation, no, consultation, no. Statutory instrument, yes. Statutory instrument, yes. Statutory instrument, no. Done.
The work isn't done. And in the meantime, gambling companies in Britain will continue to enjoy one of the most loosely regulated markets in the world. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
Private emails have been released by Prince Harry between Buckingham Palace and senior executives at News Group newspapers, which appear to show the late Queen was fully aware of the extent of the impact of phone hacking on the royal family and that negotiations were taking place. The documents emerged on the final day of proceedings brought by a group of celebrities, including the Duke of Sussex. Also in court today was the actor Hugh Grant, who claims the Sun newspaper covered up crimes, including ordering burglaries of his home, allegations denied by the publisher. Here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock.
Prince Harry hasn't made it to court, but we know he's followed proceedings closely as he accuses the Sun and the News of the World of phone hacking. Other senior royals were targeted at the time, and to that, Harry's released more sensitive emails, from the palace to the paper's executives, Rebecca Brooks and Robert Thompson. They show how much the late Queen was involved. In July 2017, Sally Osman, the Queen's head of communications, emails them confidentially with the Queen's full authority and knowledge of the scale and effect of hacking and surveillance on her family. The family wants an apology. In December, Sally emails about that unfinished business. I do hope that we can reach an understanding that resets the relationship, she says, adding, the Queen is aware that we have spoken. But the palace hears nothing. In March 2018, Sally emails, I was somewhat disappointed not to receive an acknowledgement, let alone a reply. She says frustration's increasing by the lack of response or willingness to engage. Sally threatens legal action, but there's no movement. And in May, she emails the growing concern our request is not being taken seriously. But Prince Harry is serious with this legal action, along with the actor Hugh Grant, who alleges phone hacking, blagging and even burglaries to order. They're fighting for a trial with the tabloids.
If it goes to trial, that will be a significant departure from what has up until now been the norm for the royal family, not to go into the witness box.
With fanfare, the rest of the family are preparing for the coronation, the King presenting new military standards and colours.
See the bottom.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales dropping in on the Brecon beacons. It feels a world away from Harry's court case. William's settled, but his brother still has a long way to go. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
A new report has warned history could repeat itself and that the Metropolitan Police have failed to learn the lessons from the investigation into the serial killer Stephen Port. He drugged his 4 victims and dumped their bodies near his flat in Barking in East London between June 2014 and September 2015. A report from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary concluded that if local officers had investigated the first death properly, the other 3 men might still be alive. Our correspondent Rachel Venables reports.
4 young gay men, drugged, assaulted and murdered by a serial killer. Stephen Port was free to kill again and again and again because of a calamitous litany of failures by the Met Police, who didn't think the deaths were suspicious. Now a damning new report warns it could happen again. His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary found a number of areas where the Met failed 8 years ago and have kept on failing in the investigations of sudden deaths, from not enough training for the junior officers who get called out, a lack of supervision over those officers, unacceptable record keeping, and even a reliance on luck to identify links between deaths at a local level.
If they get the basics wrong right at the start, the chances of categorising the death wrongly and therefore the danger of something like Stephen Port happened again goes up.
Missing another serial killer.
It's entirely possible.
This report is clear that 3 of Stephen Port's 4 victims didn't have to die if officers had only done the basics of police work from the beginning. Instead, he kept on killing in the same way, even leaving 2 of the bodies in the same location at this graveyard here in Barking. But the police didn't connect the dots and failed for far too long to realise they were dealing with a serial killer.
Jack was very loving, caring, life and soul of our family, life and soul of everything. And yeah, everyone just misses him dearly.
Jenny and Donna's brother Jack was Port's final victim.
We've not been able to grieve for Jack because all we've ever done is have to fight. And we're still fighting to this day for a public inquiry. We're still fighting for justice. We're still fighting for somebody to stand up and show accountability.
The Met Police say the deaths of Anthony Walgate, Gabrielle Cavari, Daniel Whitworth and Jack Taylor were a tragedy, and we're sincerely sorry we failed them and their families. While, as the inspection report acknowledges, we have worked hard since the murders to understand what went wrong and improve how we work, it highlights more we need to do. The victims' families were told in the inquest 2 years ago that police mistakes probably led to their loved ones' deaths, but this latest report brings home the agony of knowing how little has changed in the last 8 awful years, and they must be wondering how many more murders could have been missed in that time. Rachel Venables, Sky News.
Rail unions have announced more strikes affecting the FA Cup final and the Eurovision Song Contest. The RMT has rejected the latest pay offer from the Rail Delivery Group and has announced a walkout at 14 train operators to coincide with Eurovision in Liverpool on the 13th of May. Meanwhile, train drivers from the ASLEF union will strike on 3 more days, including the Cup final at Wembley on the 3rd of June. Initial data suggests Spain has experienced its hottest April day on record. Temperatures at Cordoba Airport reached 38.7 degrees Celsius today. It's forecast to get even hotter, though, with 40 degrees expected in some areas by the weekend. And in the last half an hour, Buckingham Palace has announced who's going to be performing ceremonial roles at the King's coronation at Westminster Abbey. Among those playing an official part during the service next weekend will be the House of Commons leader, Penny Mordaunt, who will carry the Sword of State, and Baroness Philomela Benjamin, who will hold the sceptre with the dove. Now, Jerry Springer, the TV host whose brash talk show became cult viewing, has died at the age of 79. From fights on set to screaming matches and a man who married a horse, he presided over some of the wildest moments on daytime television with his hit show, which spawned several imitations and was even turned into an opera. Tributes have been paid from across the entertainment industry, as our US correspondent Mark Stone reports.
He was the daytime TV pioneer. His show ran for a remarkable 27 years.
Thank you. Welcome to the show.
A format that was simple. It was hardly wholesome.
I'm a very angry person.
At times deeply uncomfortable to watch.
Season of the Jerry Springer Show begins.
And yet people did, in their millions. Jerry Springer was the talk show host who didn't do much talking.
She's sleeping with my man.
The show's success, his success, was in other people's dysfunction, the struggles of his willing guests.
It doesn't matter, though. You know we got kids together.
A format he defended.
Just regular folks of no fame, little if any wealth, and very little influence. Folks just taking a moment, which they rarely if ever get, to let the world know something about what they are thinking or feeling or doing.
And so far from being exploitative, it was, he said, rebellion against the elite.
You don't have to be born rich to make it.
It wasn't always like that, though. In the early years, before the producers realized what got the really big ratings, there was a more tender quality to his shows.
You are going to meet your daughter, Sandy, who you have not seen in 35 years. Sandy?
There's no questioning his influence globally. In the UK, the Springer format was adapted. Britain got Trisha. She and he became close friends.
He couldn't be more different in real life. He was just like, I mean, really sweet. And he didn't take himself too seriously. But he was so kind.
Jerry Springer's life had a remarkable arc. Born here in the London Underground in 1944, his parents sheltering from the Blitz above. They were both German Jewish refugees. Both his grandparents died in Nazi camps. Emigration to America came in 1950, where his eye was drawn to politics. After an unsuccessful bid for Congress and to be governor of Ohio, he became the popular progressive mayor of Cincinnati.
Thank you. Thank you for letting the son of refugees of Nazi Germany make it in America.
Reflecting on his life, a family spokesperson said he's irreplaceable and his loss hurts immensely, but memories of his intellect, heart and humour will live on.
Till next time, take care of yourself and each other.
The catchphrase of a man who was a central part of America's complicated cultural fabric. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.